This is a story of a man who once stood in front of the world and admitted that the mistakes he made were his own. A man who publicly apologized for the choices that affected the people closest to him, including those who had stood beside him during the biggest moments of his career. But behind that apology was a story much deeper than a simple mistake. A story about ambition, a story about fame, a story about how a person can rise from almost nothing, become an inspiration to millions, and then find himself surrounded by questions that change everything. Because before the controversy, before the headlines, before people began questioning the man behind the legend, there was a dream. The dream of a builder who believed that nothing was truly worthless. A man who could look at a pile of rusted metal, broken machinery, and forgotten vehicles and see something extraordinary waiting to be created. That man was Chad Hills, known around the world as Bad Chad, a small-town car builder from Nova Scotia who became famous for creating unbelievable custom vehicles and turning his imagination into a global brand. For many fans, Chad was not just a mechanic, he was an artist, someone who did not see cars the same way everyone else did. Where other builders followed instructions and traditional designs, Chad created his own rules. He mixed creativity with fabrication and turned ordinary materials into machines that looked almost impossible. People described his work as wild, unpredictable, sometimes even unbelievable. A man who could take almost nothing and somehow turn it into something people could not ignore. That is why one phrase became connected with his name. The idea that Chad could build a Bugatti out of a chicken coop. It was not just a joke. It represented the way many people saw him. A person who could create something amazing from something everyone else had already given up on. But every success story has a beginning. And Chad's beginning was far away from television cameras and international attention. His journey started in Kingsport, Nova Scotia, a small community where he was born in 1971. His early life was not built around money, privilege, or easy opportunities. There were no guarantees waiting for him, no clear path that suggested he would one day become famous. School was never where Chad felt most comfortable. Traditional education did not fit the way his mind worked. Eventually, he left school and entered the workforce at a young age. Instead of classrooms, his education came from experience, from working with his hands, from solving problems, from learning how things were built and how they could be repaired. He took difficult jobs just to survive, jobs that required physical strength and patience, including work in industrial environments and grain mills where the days were long and exhausting. For many people, that kind of life would have become the end of their dreams. But for Chad, those struggles became part of his story. Because even during those difficult years, he looked at the world differently. Most people saw broken vehicles and saw scrap. They saw old metal with no value. But Chad saw something else. He saw potential. He saw forgotten machines that still had a purpose. He saw beauty hidden beneath damage. And that mindset would eventually become the foundation of his entire career. Unlike many professional builders, Chad did not begin with expensive training or powerful connections. He did not have a major company behind him. He did not have investors waiting to support his ideas. Everything he learned came through years of hands-on experience, trial and error, failure and improvement. He taught himself welding. He learned fabrication. He developed skills in shaping metal and rebuilding vehicles. Every project became a lesson. Every mistake became part of his education. Slowly, over many years, Chad developed a style that was completely different from everyone else. He was not interested in simply restoring vehicles back to the way they were. He wanted to create something new, something nobody had seen before. Eventually, Chad opened a small workshop in Canning, Nova Scotia, a place that would become known as Green Goblin Customs. It was not a massive facility. It was not a high-end automotive shop filled with expensive equipment. It was a simple garage built on limited resources. But inside that garage was something more valuable than money: creativity. This was where Chad began transforming forgotten vehicles into unusual works of art. He used parts from places most builders would never consider: pieces from boats, parts from airplanes, farm equipment, scrap yards, anything that could help bring his ideas to life. The result was something completely unique: machines that looked like they belonged somewhere between a classic car, a piece of machinery, and a work of art. Some people looked at his creations and saw genius. Others looked at them and saw chaos. But whether people loved his style or questioned it, everyone agreed on one thing: Chad Hills was different. And slowly, people started paying attention. His reputation grew. His creations started spreading. And the small town builder who once worked far away from the spotlight was beginning to attract a much bigger audience. But as his popularity increased, another side of his story also began receiving attention. A side that would become important later, because behind every public image is a private reality. And Chad's journey was no different. As his fame grew, discussions began appearing about his past, including reports of legal issues, accusations, and controversies connected to his name. Some people viewed those moments as part of a difficult past. They believed Chad was a person who had struggled, made mistakes, and continued trying to rebuild his life. Just like he rebuilt broken cars, others viewed those events differently. They saw them as warning signs, signs that the success story was more complicated than it appeared from the outside. And then came the person who would become one of the most important figures in Chad's journey. The person who helped transform a talented builder into a recognizable brand. Her name was Jolene McIntyre. When Jolene McIntyre entered Chad's life, the direction of his career began to change, because Chad already had something that could not be taught: vision, creativity, the ability to imagine things that other people could not see. But turning that talent into a worldwide brand required something else: organization, strategy, communication. And that was where Jolene became an important part of the story. Chad and Jolene were very different people. Chad was the creator, the builder, the person who worked through instinct and imagination. He could look at a damaged vehicle and immediately picture what it could become. Jolene approached things from another perspective. With a background connected to commerce and finance, she understood that success required more than just talent inside a garage. A great builder could create amazing things, but a great brand needed a story. It needed an audience. It needed a way for people around the world to discover it. And according to many people familiar with their journey, Jolene helped create that connection. She did not just stand beside Chad. She helped build the public image of Bad Chad. She began documenting the builds, recording the progress, sharing the behind-the-scenes moments, managing social media, creating content that allowed people to see the creativity happening inside the workshop. And that changed everything, because people were not only interested in the final vehicles, they became interested in the journey. They wanted to see the struggle behind every project. They wanted to see the problems, the mistakes, the pressure, the impossible deadlines. They wanted to watch an old forgotten vehicle slowly transform into something nobody expected. The small garage operation in Nova Scotia started attracting attention far beyond the local car community. The Bad Chad name began spreading online. Fans from around the world started following the builds. They became invested in the process. They became invested in the people, and eventually, that attention reached television. In 2019, the world was introduced to Bad Chad Customs. The show brought Chad's unique style of building to a much larger audience. But what made